Hi there, and welcome back to our Starsector pirate campaign. I'd like to start by noting a mistake that I made in the previous episode, in which I referred to the planet that we were raiding as Tartessus. In reality, we were raiding Hesperus, which is a considerably smaller colony in the same system. Had we actually been raiding Tartessus instead, our raids would probably have turned out considerably worse. Anyway, our first raid got us more than enough supplies to get us through the exploration missions that Alvis at the Glacier Academy had sent us on, but we were still considerably low on fuel, so I decided to open this time by launching a second raid on Hesperus to get us the fuel that we need for this trip. With the success of that raid, we're now amply prepared for a journey to beyond the core worlds. And considering that we already checked out most of the star systems in the area that we'll be heading to, I'll probably place a number of cuts here just to show you the highlights of what we found. The first of our missions involves delivering a number of scientists from Galatia to a remote research station here on ARRGH. Unfortunately, it seems a number of things have gone awry here. A rogue AI has taken over the station and is currently holding the human scientists hostage. Of course, being the smooth-talking pirate that we are, we're going to try and convince this AI to let the scientists go. And in exchange, we're going to promise to reunite it with some of its AI buddies. For now, we'll just bring it on board in the form of a beta AI core and, I don't know, let the crew play football with it or something. With the crisis averted, the scientists thank us for our troubles, and everyone is happy. The second mission has us looking for a probe in the same system where we found a different probe in the previous episode. I don't know why Alvis didn't just have us look for both probes at the same time, but who am I, a mere mortal, to question his motives? So we've been flying around for a few days now with the neutrino detector on, and we've been following a ping that seems to be leading us into the ring system surrounding the primary star. As it turns out, the probe seems to be located in the middle of a ship graveyard, so let's grab the probe and then turn the rest of these ships into scrap. While we're taking a closer look at the probe, it does a few things that, while scary, ultimately don't do any harm to us. Nonetheless, we may be able to leverage the situation and negotiate some additional hazard pay from Alvis once we get back to Galatia. So let's quickly finish breaking up the rest of these derelict ships and then head back to Alvis for our pay. Well, we almost made it back to Galatia, but we're just outside of Corvus right now, and there appears to be a Tritachyon fleet that wants to have a word with us. Now, we're not exactly the most popular people in the sector, so I wouldn't normally be inclined to honor that sort of request. But this fleet does have an Astral and a Doom, and that's piqued my interest a bit. It would seem she's interested in the information that we grabbed out of that probe for Alvis. Of course, I've absolutely no intentions of betraying our best friend, and only guy in the sector still able to get Tritech CEO Artemisia's son all hot and bothered, Alvis Sebastian. And I think just for suggesting such a thing, we should confiscate some of their nice shiny high-tech ships. Let's send out the whole fleet and show this inconsiderate Tritachyon scum exactly how we feel. I don't know if this Tritech fleet is quite large enough for the command points to matter at the moment, but we are quickly approaching the point where we'll be facing fleets against which the command points will matter. So let's start getting into the habit of locking them down with some of our faster ships. The Brawler can take the point to the east, I'll go after the point to the west, and we'll move the rest of the fleet down the center, and hopefully they'll grab the southern point along the way. As usual, the Omen will be following me, and then the rest of our smaller ships will be evenly distributed among the larger ones. The only enemy ship that's giving me pause at the moment is the Doom. If it happens to drop a mine in the gap in our shields and disables our engines, we'll be entirely dependent on the Omen to pull us out of the fire. The Astral, on the other hand, is able to project a lot more force and over a lot greater distance, but whatever it's doing, we should be able to see coming from a long way away. So as long as we're paying attention, it's unlikely to ever pose a serious threat to the Flagship. But we will still want to keep an eye on the rest of our fleet, just to make sure they're not getting bombed into oblivion. Meanwhile, this Tempest is making very poor decisions. Alright, let's go back and capture that point. I don't want to spend too long tied up against this shade. It's way too fast for us to be able to catch, so let's just finish capturing the point. And that'll hopefully delay it a bit while it tries to take the point back. Alright, that might buy us a few seconds of peace. Let's see what the rest of the fleet is up to. It looks like some of these carriers in the back are a little bit exposed. They're sitting next to the Astral, but the Astral isn't a battleship, so they're probably not as well protected as they think they are. Well, we had to tank a little bit of damage there once those missiles came our way, but it's nothing we can't handle. Let's get the other one now. These squall missiles that the Astral is firing only track you when they're first fired. After that they just travel in a straight line, so at long range it is possible to dodge some of them. Which reminds me of another mistake that we made in the previous episode. I incorrectly stated that we'd put squall missiles onto the Conquest, when in fact those were Locust SRMs. So I apologize if your disappointment is immeasurable and your day is ruined. I feel the same way. Anyway, it looks like the Brawler has the Doom distracted right now. So let's have everyone attack the Astral while I try to take out the second Drover. Well, that was much easier. And now we can use his corpse as cover. And I'm just going to move a bit to the left so we stay out of everyone else's firing line. And now let's gang up on that Doom, who will definitely attempt some serious douchebaggery while it tries to get away. And leading the charge is our Enforcer, whose shield arc leaves a lot to be desired. That's probably not the best choice, but who am I to tell him not to chase his dreams? And our Shrike seems to be having a bad time too. Maybe we should have him back off for now. That's a bit of a mess in there. Where are you, Shrike? Ah, there you are. Get back. And Hammerhead? You're fine. Fortunately, the Doom should be nearly fluxed out, so we're almost done here. Alright, well we could have taken Fury missiles to the face, but overall not too bad. They do still have a fuel tanker that would make a nice addition. Let's pursue and try to keep this quick. One of the comments that I received on the previous video asked whether or not I had any plans in terms of final fleet composition. And the answer is not really. Initially I was only looking for ships that would make solid additions to our fleet. But now that we have enough ships to use all of our available deployment points in a given battle, I'm going to try to minimize the number of ships that we have of exactly the same class, except in a few specific scenarios that have yet to come up. So other than my own personal preference for having as few duplicates as possible, I don't have any specific goals in terms of composition. In all likelihood, we'll probably end up with a fairly even mix of larger capital ships and smaller cruiser and destroyer class ships, with perhaps a few of the more outstanding frigates mixed in to help us capture points and act as cover for our more vulnerable backline carriers and fire support ships. Alright, well we've caught up to all of the ships that I was looking at as potential salvage, so I think I'll call off the pursuit here. Alright, let's see if we got anything special. Okay, we got the Doom, that's a good start. And the Astral too. Well, that changes things. So the Astral suffers from some of the same issues that we had with the Legion several episodes back. But as a carrier, it's objectively better owing to its more numerous hangar bays and its active skill. So I think we're actually going to take it, along with this Medusa. I'm really conflicted about this one, and I may yet change my mind before we get to the next station. On one hand, I have been looking for a carrier, and as far as carriers go, it's hard to do better than an astral. But on the other hand, if we just got 2 herons, we would end up with the same number of hangar bays, and we wouldn't end up slowing down our whole fleet. Maybe I'll just keep it for now, and if any other carriers end up in salvage, we can revisit this question. Since we're planning on keeping the Astral for now, I'm going to do my best to equip it for combat. But as has been the story for our entire campaign so far, we're woefully understocked in most of the things that I would want to put on it. For example, we don't have any of the carrier-specific hull mods available to us yet, so I've just built in hardened shields and left it at that. For the fighter bays, I happen to have a squadron each of Dagger, Kopesh, and Piranha bombers. And then for the remaining bays, I added Broadsword, Gladius, and Warthog fighters. In the large missile slots, it did already have a Squall MLRS from when we recovered it. The only other large missile weapon that we have is a Cyclone Reaper launcher, but I don't want this thing trying to fire off unguided torpedoes from the back line, so I added a Salamander pod instead. And in the remaining slots, I just added in whatever long-range beam and point defense weapons we happen to have lying around. With the remaining ordnance points, I added stabilized shields, which should encourage it to keep its shields up if it gets in trouble. And then everything else went into a healthy mix of vents and capacitors. So at the end of the day, this is what we're left with. It's messy, but functional enough that I'll probably still field it with some regularity. Now let's take a look at the Doom. In many ways, this ship is in a better position than the Astral. For starters, it came with only 1 D-mod, and one that should have minimal impact on its combat performance. Second, a lot of its damage comes from the mines that it can deploy, which thankfully come built in, so we don't need to scour the sector for the appropriate weapon system. And third, we just so happen to have a pair of Cyclone Reaper launchers, which work well in its medium missile slots. Where it falls down is our lack of ion pulsars, or some other medium energy weapon that can help it break shields, so that it can make the most of its missile payload. That means it's going to have to rely on its speed and maneuverability in order to find gaps in enemy shield coverage. For hull mods, I added heavy armor and reinforced bulkheads to improve its survivability. And of course I added safety overrides as well, because my thirst for danger is insatiable, and at this point it's pretty much a hallmark of the campaign. Of course, as a phase ship, that means it's going to burn through combat readiness at an alarming pace, so I added hardened subsystems to try and offset that a bit. And finally, any remaining points went into capacitors and then vents. Now that that's taken care of, I think the time has finally come for us to go back to Galatia and visit Alvis. In case you're wondering what we did with the Medusa, the truth is, I completely forgot about it. Thankfully, I suspect that we'll be making at least one more trip to a friendly station before we head out on our next expedition, so we should still have another opportunity to get it ready to go before our next major engagement. At the same time, our weapon stockpiles are getting pretty low even by this campaign's rather Spartan standards. So we will eventually want to slow down our fleet growth a bit, and take a few large fights with the express intent of obtaining some new weapons. Hey Alice. So remember that science team you had us transporting? Well, I have some bad news. What? Dead? No, of course not. But we may have inadvertently set a rogue AI loose in the Procyon sector. I'm just kidding. The crew strung him up in one of the empty cargo holds and decided to use him as a disco ball. Oh, and that probe you had us pick up? It sort of exploded. We got the data, but we lost 3 members of the salvage team too. Their names? Thomas, Richard, and Harold. Yes, it's all very sad. The 3 of them were brothers. The crew even set up an account to take donations for the family. What's that? You'd like to donate? No, I couldn't possibly. Oh, well, if you insist. Here, let me give you the family's account information. You're really much too kind, Alvis. So, apart from paying us rather handsomely for our previous work, Alvis also wants us to ferry another one of those rich kid VIPs, this time to ARRGH in the Arcadia system, and we'll also be paying the ransom for a scientist who was kidnapped by pirates at the Thulian Raider base. After all that's done, hopefully Alvis will like us enough to recommend that Baird give us something more substantial to do. Since we're not looking for a fight here, and just completing busy work for Alvis until we get to the meat of the story, I'll probably place a few quick cuts here, just to show you the highlights, and then we'll regroup back at Glacia once it's all said and done with. Of course, our first objective is only one system over in Arcadia. Well, I hope his parents don't mind if he shows up with a few extra face tattoos. I mean, what were they expecting? It's not like we're running a petting zoo here. Well, actually that's not true. I think a couple of guys set one up in one of the spare fuel tanks. But we don't judge here. I mean, not fitting in is part of why they're pirates in the first place. Anyway, onward to Thule. Our second task involves getting back a scientist that got kidnapped by a few of our pirate buddies over here at the Thulean Raider base. Since these guys are supposed to be our friends, I think we'll try to keep everything civil here. Though, again, I can't promise that we'll return the scientist in exactly the same condition in which we found him. And after stocking up on all the regular provisions, it's time to head back to the academy. Okay, it's finally time to see if Alvis is ready to move our relationship to the next level. I'm so excited. I feel like he and I have really bonded over the past few months. We have that special kind of connection that can only come from transporting people around the sector and finding weird technological artifacts in exchange for money. Wait, really, Alvis? Oh, I'm so glad you feel the same way. Oh my god, I'm crying right now. You've made me the happiest man in the Persean sector. If only there was some way I could express how much our friendship means to me. Oh, you want me to sneak some guy out of a Tritachyon black site? Sure, yeah, I guess that counts. I'll get right on it. So Alvis has finally decided to give us the first of several tasks that will actually move the story forward from this point on. And it involves transverse jumping into the same black hole system that we've now visited twice already, to grab a scientist from what's supposed to be a top-secret Tritachyon facility. The reason Alvis suggests we transverse jump is because the jump points are guarded by some particularly well-armed mercenaries. However, I also happen to know those mercenaries can field some particularly rare ships, so I'll be looking to engage at least one of those mercenary fleets if we're in any condition to do so. However, before we get started, we could really use some more fuel, and we just so happen to have stumbled upon a convoy that's carrying fuel, so I'm gonna emergency burn here to try and chase them down. Alright, in terms of combat ships, there's only a Griffin, Sunder, and a few small frigates, so I think we can make do with just the Hammerhead, and let's see what the Doom is able to do here. Of all the ships in vanilla Starsector, it's hard to find one as well regarded as the Doom. So let's see if, despite a subpar weapon configuration, it can still live up to that reputation. Well, the Atlas went down easily enough, but that shouldn't surprise anyone. Let's see if the Griffin can offer a bit more of a challenge. We're living a little dangerously here, but the Doom's got our back, right? Right, Doom? Well, it certainly seems as if the Doom is willing to eat a few harpoon missiles for us. But given the circumstances, I don't know if that makes it brave or just dumb. Alright, I can see the tanker now, and the Colossus too. They're the only other ships I'm interested in salvaging, so hopefully after we take them down, the rest of the fleet will turn tail and run. While we're doing that, I just want to acknowledge all of you who have decided to spend some time to join us on this Starsector campaign so far. Whether you're tuning in just to try and make it through your daily grind, or enjoying a healthy dose of Starsector at the end of a busy day, I deeply appreciate that you've decided to spend your time sharing in this experience. And I will be honored if you decide to continue to join in, as we grow from humble beginnings to hopefully a force that can change the Persean sector. And I'll continue to do my utmost to keep the experience interesting, so that when it's all said and done, there'll be plenty of moments for the highlight reel. Alright, so we're letting a substantial number of ships go here, but we do have a chance to salvage the Atlas, and I think we're going to take it. Now that we have the Astral, an Atlas with militarized subsystems isn't going to slow us down any further. So our priority now is to find a place where we can get that hull mod installed. But that sounds like something we can do in the next episode. So until then, thank you so much for watching, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you out there in the sector.